Hey folks, welcome back to Naman Reviews. As a fan of the character Superman, I am very excited for this one. Today, we're looking at Inart Superman from Batman vs Superman. I must confess that I'm not a big fan of Zack Snyder. I also didn't like a lot of Batman vs Superman. However, Snyder did cast the perfect last son of Krypton in Henry Cavill. So I'm excited to see what improvements Inart has made over Hot Toys for this character. So let's take this to the light box. We'll also enjoy some fun poses and settle on a final score. But before we do, may I request that you hit those like and subscribe buttons to support my channel. Here we have the gorgeous art box, and I love that Inart covers their art boxes with very high quality slip covers. Not only do they feel high quality, but they look nice too. In the front it says Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice. Down below says Superman Inart 1/6 collectible figures. Taking off the slipcover reveals this absolutely gorgeous Batman vs Superman box art. In the back you can see a red Batman symbol. In the middle there is the Henry Cavill silhouette, and in front there is the Superman logo with plenty of bats in red flying around. Up top says Superman, down below you've got some branding. And if you feel the art box, you can tell this is very high quality printing, and I love the embossed nature of the logo. The beautiful box art continues on the side. Again, I love those bats flying around, but I do wish that Inart would pick less plain looking fonts. The back of the box looks pretty good too. You've got the Batman vs Superman logo up top, have some graffiti at the bottom, have some branding at the bottom. I guess that's a lot of time admiring this beautiful box. It's time to open it up. Inside the box you've got the Batman vs Superman logo, and up top you have the manual. Whoa. So you've got the Superman body, a couple of head sculpts, you've got the spear, and 5 pairs of hands. For some reason, my Superman's head is turned inside the box. It's usually facing straight up, but as long as there's no damage, I am perfectly okay with him coming with his head turned. Next layer, looks like you have the flight pole, extra cape, base, Batman mask, and a few other smaller accessories that we will check out in more detail. So before we take a look at the manual and the accessories and the figure in great detail, I can't help but take a quick peek at the figure itself and the extra head sculpt. First impressions are very positive. I think this is the best Henry Cavill sculpt on the market today, certainly better than anything Hot Toys has produced. Looks like a young little Henry Cavill. From certain angles, the likeness is outstanding. Figure is surprisingly heavy. I love how the suit looks, shining. And I think the proportions on the body are outstanding. Just from first impressions, these proportions are much better than anything Hot Toys has done. Hot Toys proportions are just whack. Hot Toys version of Superman either looks too big or too skinny, and the proportions are just off. And this looks a lot like Henry Cavill's body. Not that I've been looking that closely. Now here are some minor negatives just based on first impressions. First of all, it feels like this is missing a coat of paint. I do appreciate that the skin tone is lighter than the Hot Toys version, which is too dark, but it just feels like it's missing a coat of paint here. The other thing I don't like is that the seam is just a bit too visible. And finally, just based on first impressions, I think the soft goods are just a bit too soft. And when you feel the Hot Toys version of Superman, it kind of feels like armor. Even though it is fabric, it's thicker, it feels more durable, it feels more like a Superman costume should be. Another flaw I'm noticing, and this is a minor one, is that the yellow coloring on his belt is a little bit off center, but it's not a deal breaker at all. Again, these are just first impressions, but I am super impressed, no pun intended. Now we're looking at the alternative head sculpt. This is the Angry sculpt, and it looks amazing. Look at that side profile, just looks like Henry Cavill. I must admit, one thing I was concerned about was the eyes, because some people have received sculpts where only one eye was painted by mistake, but fortunately both of my Henry Cavill sculpt's eyes are painted red. As is typical of Inart, you get a lot of nice literature with this Superman toy. You've got this Superman movie stub, got the Inart logo over there. Nice quality card. Good print quality too. I think this is some sort of a serial number. And this envelope, I think, will have a thank you letter. Finally, we have the manual. Always a good idea to read your manual before you play with your figure, just to avoid damaging it, just to learn how to use the accessories and how to articulate it correctly. As usual, nice thick manual by Inart and nice illustrations in there too. Always appreciate that Inart tells you where all the accessories are in the box. Also tells you what the accessories are, so you're not left guessing. Tells you how to articulate the figure. Tells you about the hands. Shows you all the accessories. Now, this is a bit disappointing, but I think there's no light up feature on that spear. Hopefully they have light up eyes like the Hot Toys version, but I do not think that is true either. You can certainly roll them, but I don't think the eyes light up. Here is the warranty and after sale service, and that's pretty much it. So good, useful manual by Inart, but I am disappointed that there are no light up features. In fact, I am quite surprised. Here are all the accessories that Inart Superman comes with. You've got 10 hands, including grabbing hands, fists, pinching hands, and more. These don't include the 2 relaxed hands already attached to the body. You've got this kryptonite spear, flight pole for this somewhat modular base. I say somewhat because you can't really change it, but you can remove this part to attach the flight pole. Otherwise, you can have him standing on the magnets, which can be modified a little bit. You've got this empty Batman cowl. Got a couple of sculpts. Got these really creepy Martha Polaroids. This chunk of kryptonite grenade. You've also got this wired cape that we will look at more deeply in a little bit of time. I think both of these sculpts are outstanding. I kind of prefer the neutral sculpt. It looks more like Cavill, but this angry sculpt is also outstanding. I think the molds on these heads are fantastic. You can also manipulate the eyes. I do wish that this one had the light up feature. The paint apps are good, though it just feels like there's some detail missing, maybe a coat of paint missing. And these sculpts don't do well under bright lights because of that lack of paint, I feel. That being said, I'm still happy with these, and I think they're far superior to anything Hot Toys has done. And we're going to look at these sculpts in comparison with the latest Hot Toys Henry Cavill Superman sculpts in a little bit of time. Nice little kryptonite grenade, looks pretty accurate to the film, highly detailed. I love the dry brushing to give it that wear. I wish that it was die cast instead of plastic, but in comparison with what Hot Toys has given us, this is really nice. This chunk of kryptonite is a nice accessory to have. It is green translucent plastic. Don't think it's painted. Nice thick material, and it does shine under the right lighting. Unfortunately, it does not have a light up feature, and I think it sorely needs that. But very nicely sculpted. In a funny way, it looks like an embryo. Like a green fetus. These tiny Martha Polaroids are creepy AF. I don't know who asked for these, but we do have them. They look like they're something from a horror film. They're really nicely constructed. If you see them on your monitor or on TV in this review, you might think they're real Polaroids. They are that good. This Snyderverse Batman cowl is absolutely gorgeous, far better than anything we've gotten from Hot Toys. Nice soft material, good coloring. Look at all that detail in front, at the back, on the side. Very accurate to what we saw on film, and interestingly, the top part is magnetic because one of these hands is magnetic. This one, what you can do is, there you go. So you can attach this hand to Superman's body and it looks like he's carrying around Batman's cowl. The Kryptonite Spear by Inart is far superior to what we got with Hot Toys because that one looked like a small toy. This looks like the real thing. It looks like a prop. I love the black wash they've given it in some areas to bring out those details. Nice bit of dry brushing, and the mold is outstanding. Nice thin rod, just like the film. But just like Gandalf's staff, they could have included a tiny LED over here and had the light up feature while still maintaining this slim form factor. This base is very simple, but I do like it. Nice, heavy, thick material, good detailing on that rock. There's a black or gray wash over here just to bring out the details with some dry brushing. Up front, you can see that logo looks pretty good. You have some lead pipes coming out. Of course, they're plastic or resin, not quite sure. But good detailing all around this base. And as I mentioned, it is modular, kind of modular. So you can take off this piece here, and then you can attach the flight pole, and that fits into Superman's back, which is kind of innovative, unlike Hot Toys, which had a clamp that can damage the suit. Turn it around and you see the familiar magnet system. I've already turned this so I can open it for you guys. So you can shift the magnets up and down. You can also move this left and right according to the pose you want your Superman to take if you don't have him on the flight pole. While this system is innovative, I do wish that Inart just put a giant magnet here, or maybe a steel plate and the magnet under the toy's feet, because while this is interesting, it doesn't work really well. Figures tend to fall, and Inart just needs to do better here. They don't need to ditch the magnet system. That's not the lesson here. They just need to improve it. Here is a sample of the hands, and I do like the skin tone on them. I think the molds are pretty good, nice detail on the fingernails and the veins. And as you can see, one of them has a magnet to hold the cowl. So nothing to complain about, though I have heard that it's a bit of a nightmare to change the hands. So we're going to check that out in a little bit of time. Here is the alternative cape, not as good as a third-party cape, but still pretty good. I like the material, I like the coloring. Nice stitching, no flaws that I can see, no threads coming out or anything like that. And of course, it's wired, so you can get some really awesome dynamic poses. The only flaw I've heard is that it is a bit of a nightmare to remove that other cape and get this one in. It can damage the costume permanently, so I am a bit wary about changing the capes around. Let's do some sculpt comparisons, and here we have the two Inart sculpts. This is the normal sculpt. This is, of course, the angry sculpt. These are the Justice League Hot Toys Superman sculpts. This is, of course, the neutral sculpt, and this is the angry sculpt. Finally, this is a third-party sculpt that for some reason went viral. Everyone wanted this sculpt, even though I think this is pretty much a recast of this Hot Toys sculpt with a different paint job. But for some reason, this sculpt went very popular. I didn't personally like it. I thought it was just a ripoff of the Hot Toys sculpt. Looking at all of these sculpts side by side, there's no doubt in my mind that the Inart sculpts are the best ones. The molds are far superior to the molds over here. They look much more like Henry Cavill. While the molds over here, they're not bad. They were not bad for their time, but they do look like caricatures of Henry Cavill. It almost looks like a Mad Magazine artist rendering of Henry Cavill. The nose is just a bit too big. The cheekbones are a bit too wide. The features are just a bit too sculpted. And the features here are softer, they are more realistic, and I think these molds are much better than these molds here. Now let's compare these side profiles of all of these sculpts, and as you can see, again, the Hot Toys features are just too exaggerated. Again, a bit like a caricature, maybe drawn by a Mad Magazine artist. You can see the chin, the cheekbones, and even the nose. Just too angular, just too much going on over there, whereas the Inart features much more subtle, much more like Henry Cavill. For a lot of people, the Inart sculpts are the highlight of this product, but I actually really like the body, in particular the proportions. They are superhero proportions, but they're very authentic to how Henry Cavill looked on film. Compare these to the Hot Toys bodies that we saw with Justice League, with Batman vs. Superman, and we'll do some comparisons later, but the bodies are unrealistic by Hot Toys. They kind of look like gorillas or generic action figures, but this is fantastic in terms of proportions. The body feels like it's very high quality. It's a nice metallic body, and it's shining under these soft goods. Looks gorgeous under lights, under the sun even. I also like how you can see the musculature on the biceps, on the abs, on the chest. A little bit subtle compared to what we saw on film though. I have been critical of these soft goods on Inart figures in the past. I find some of them feel a bit cheap, but these feel very high end and very high quality, though I do wish that the costume wasn't as soft as it is. This feels very soft, almost like a nightgown, and I think that Superman's costume was a bit like an armor, and it was a bit thicker, and these are just a bit too soft. Still feels good, and the cape is definitely superior to what Hot Toys gave us. Not only does it hang better and drapes nicely, but very high quality material. I like how Inart has captured the subtle designs. You can see that little stripe on the chest, on the biceps over here as well. Unfortunately, this being an Inart figure, there have been some QC issues. For a lot of people, the belt is a bit off center, especially that yellow bit. It is too far to the right or the left. And same with the emblem on the chest. When you turn the figure around, of course, you can see the super butt over here, and there is a zip here that you can raise to connect the stand, which I think is a fantastic piece of innovation by Inart. You can simply roll this up, connect the stand, and then you don't have to put a clamp around the waist, which can potentially ruin the costume. In fact, it has for many Superman figures by Hot Toys. There you go. There's a hole over here, and I believe the clamp fits in here. Happy to say this zip feels strong, doesn't feel like it's going to break anytime soon. The other issue seems to be that when you remove the cape to put on the other one, you can damage the holes over here. So again, I plan to do that, but I'm going to be very careful. Now we have Inart BVS Superman in a museum pose, and if you glance at it on the internet, you might even think this is someone cosplaying as Henry Cavill. The biggest improvement over the Hot Toys versions of this figure is, of course, again, that body. The proportions are nearly perfect. Shoulders, biceps, chest, abs, thighs look very realistic. They do look like a superhero figure, but they also look realistic. And when we compare this to the Hot Toys figure, you will see what a huge upgrade this is. How the metallic body is shining through those soft goods. I love how this cape drapes on the body, and I also love the little subtle design nods to the film. For example, you've got that little design on the chest. You also got it on the biceps. As mentioned earlier, some people have been unfortunate to get some misalignment on the belt and on the chest emblem, but I think I'm lucky. Mine looks pretty good. So now let's compare the Inart BVS Superman with the Hot Toys Justice League Superman, and the difference is almost comical. This is a far superior figure. This looks like a work of art almost compared to this, which feels like a high-end collector's toy, but it feels much more like a toy. Of course, the colors on here are much brighter because this is the Justice League version. So that aside, just compare the bodies. Now, I was actually shocked putting them together. I thought the Hot Toys figure would be much bigger than the Inart figure, and the reason I thought it would be much bigger, I thought it would tower over the Inart figure, was because they have made these proportions so comical. He looks like a gorilla. He looks like a caricature. The waist is just too small, the chest is too big, the legs too far apart. Very, very chunky thighs. I also hate how the fabric bunches up on the ankles, and these proportions feel like superhero proportions. They feel like Henry Cavill's proportions, but they also feel very authentic. And just compare the head sculpts. This feels like a caricature. This feels like it is actually Henry Cavill down to 1/6 scale. Look how beautifully the Inart figure cape drapes versus here where it looks pretty awful. And of course, then there are these skin tones. On the Inart figure, feels like a realistic skin tone. Here, I think it's just a bit too dark. Though again, as I mentioned, the skin tone by Hot Toys, maybe it's an extra coat of paint, it stands better under bright, harsher lighting. Another area where the Hot Toys figure has the Inart figure beat is in terms of QC. I've rarely heard of any problems with this figure, but I've heard of too many issues with this. And of course, that's because Inart is a newer company, not making any excuses for them. Sometimes the QC issues can be pretty bad, but they are still trying to figure out their process. But yeah, front on, there is no doubt in my mind, the Inart figure blows away the Hot Toys figure in almost every regard. Looking at them from the side again, the proportions are very different. This feels like a collectible for adults, and this feels a lot more like a toy now, especially when it's next to Inart Superman. Swapping the sculpts doesn't change the results. The angry sculpt on the Inart figure and the angry sculpt on the Superman Hot Toys figure, Inart still wins by a mile. I think Hot Toys overdid their angry sculpt. It looks like an angry Kryptonian vampire rather than Henry Cavill. But let's light it up and see if that makes a difference. The light up sculpt does look pretty cool, doesn't it? But it's just not enough to overcome the faults of this figure compared to what we get from Inart. Now that we've seen the figure in great detail, it's time to check out the articulation. So head is on a peg, so you get a lot of movement. Basically turns 360 degrees. Tilts a little bit left, right, looks up. Wish it looked up a bit more, but it does not because there is no neck peg. Shoulder goes up pretty nicely. Rotates forward, rotates back. I think it can rotate quite a bit more, but I don't want to ruin this figure. This is not a review sample. Nice double jointed elbow. Cut at the bicep, so there's some rotation there. Of course, wrist rotates freely. Waist twists, tilts. There's the cut at the chest. Some chest movement. Ab crunch too. Thighs rotate. Double jointed knee. Ankle rotation. Kicks forward. Kicks back, but not too much. Overall, the articulation on this figure is pretty good, but I have not pushed it as much as I might have because the figure is quite expensive and I don't want to damage the suit. So apologies for that, but you should be able to get some amazing poses with this Superman toy. Let's also look at how to articulate the eyes. It's pretty standard operating procedure. Simply lift the head off the peg, and as you can see, there are some levers inside, and you can manipulate these levers to move the eyes around. And now he's looking a bit cross-eyed. So let me just adjust this off camera. There you go, he is looking to the side now, looking a bit suspicious. Maybe he sees Batman and Martha spending too much time together. So folks, this is the part I'm most nervous about, changing the hands and changing the cape, because I have heard people have damaged their figure, they've damaged the costume when changing the hands, and they've damaged this part where the cape clips in when they remove the cape and add a new one. So, wish me luck. Well, it doesn't matter if you wish me luck because you're going to see this after I've done it. So, okay, so folks, I have managed to change the hands, and I apologize, I had to do it off camera. The reason I had to do it off camera was because it is nerve-wracking. For starters, they have changed the pegs. These pegs are bigger than regular Inart bodies, and that makes the hands much harder to get on. The other issue is this metallic body and this very soft fabric make this for a very tricky situation because it is very slippery. So you can't get a grip on the costume without the costume sliding back, and then you feel like you're going to break something. I don't think they realized that the fabric would be so slippery on this body, but it is what it is, and I think they made the situation worse by making these pegs bigger than they usually are. I don't know why they did that. I have taken the cape off body, and I have to say I am not impressed by the design by Inart. And I was very careful, I was very gentle, but they already look like they're widening a bit. Got the wired cape on, and I have to say I'm quite impressed. I love all the wiring throughout the cape. You can get some dynamic poses, though I am worried about these holes on the costume. They seem to be expanding. It might be my imagination, I would suggest that if you don't need to change the cape, just don't. I don't think it's worth the risk. But if you really do want that wired cape, just change it once. I think the more you change, the worse this is going to get. Now that we've seen the articulation and the accessories, it's time to take Superman to the toy room for some fun poses. It's now time to put Superman under the portrait lens for a deeper look at the sculpt and the body. From certain angles, the likeness to Henry Cavill is exceptional, though I do wish the skin tone was just a little darker. The soft goods look gorgeous under lights, and that metallic body really shines through. Although that base is small, it looks really nice. The angry sculpt is nice, but doesn't hold a candle to the main sculpt. I think the biggest problem is it looks like he's smelling a very stinky fart. I love the magnetic cowl accessory and how it attaches to the hand. I took out Supes for an outdoor shot in the Canadian winter, and the wind was blowing really strong. Time for some size comparison, and I thought it would be fun to show you guys the difference between a 1/6 scale figure and a 1/12 scale figure. On the right, we have Mafex Superman from the Batman Hush line, and this is definitely one of the best Superman action figures ever made, and these two look kind of cute together. Up next in the size comparison list, we have Hot Toys 1978 Christopher Reeve Superman, and this figure is still really good. Can you believe that this came out 13 or 14 years ago? Next up, we have Inart Batman, and there's no chance in hell that these two versions of these characters are ever going to meet on film, but the toys display very nicely, and these two are definitely the best versions of these characters in 1/6 scale. Finally, we have Hot Toys Suicide Squad Batman. This figure is an absolute beast, and they're doing a second version of the Batman vs Superman Batman, so I can't wait to see how that looks. That figure is supposed to be even bigger than this one. In addition, Inart is also doing their version of Batman vs Superman Batman, which is essentially the same design as Suicide Squad Batman. My final score for Inart Superman is going to be 4 out of 5 stars. There is a lot to like about this toy. The sculpt is definitely a big upgrade over the Hot Toys version. Costume does look gorgeous, and the metallic body shines under the lights. I love both the capes, and I enjoy the innovative way the flight pole attaches to the body. I do have some gripes. The skin tone feels a bit too light. The hands and cape are a bit challenging to swap out, and I wish the eyes and the spear lit up. Of course, there also have been some quality control issues with this figure. These gripes aside, this is certainly the best Superman toy in this scale, especially if you can get a good copy. That's my review, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Please do check out my other reviews, and don't forget to subscribe.